So you play through the MSQ as a summoner, and now you are chilling with your Solar Bahamut at level 100. But then you notice that your green cousin over there is also at level 100, and you want to give it a try. Well, you're in the right place, my friend, as I'll be explaining how to play Scholar for you summoner mains in this video. This guide will only teach you the basic of Scholar at level 100 and to get you familiar with its toolkit. Also, when it's possible to explain something in summoner term, I'll try to do that. But not all of them are exact one-to-one, so please keep that in mind. Let's start with the thing outside of the toolkits. Since you will be changing not only your job, but also your role as well, it is important that you have to remember that your role as a healer is to keep everyone alive and to not DPS. Well, some veteran healer might argue otherwise, but the basic of basic is, as a healer you need to heal and DPS is a secondary objective. Also, I suggest that you make a habit of looking at the party list, since that should be your main focus as a healer, so that when there's someone that needs healing, you can heal them quickly. And one last thing about playing as a scholar is that you are a barrier healer, which means that your healing is not that strong, but you have a bunch of mitigation options. Therefore, mitigate a lot, because if the damage comes through without mitigation, you will have a hard time topping off your team. And that should be all of the rule of thumb that you should be keeping in your mind while playing as a scholar. And now we will be diving into the job itself. Let's go over Scholar Basic Healing tool first, which means skill that unlock behind job specific resources and can be used all the time if they are not on cooldown. Aetherflow and Consultations are Scholar Basic GCD healing spell. Both will do a bit of healing and project shield onto your target. Aetherflow, or Aetherflow for short, is for stronger single target heal and shield, while Consultation is a weaker but AoE versions. Recitation is a bit complex to mention what it do entirely in this part, so I will only cover the general usage of it first. When you use recitations, your next GCD heal will not use MP and it will guarantee critical hit, which means thick shield. Deployment tactic. This skill allows you to spread your shield to other player near your shielded target. Now, some of you may be thinking, what if I use recitation, then Aetherflow onto myself and deployment tactic? Well, you are correct. That is the way to use this skill since the shield will be stronger than the standard Consultation's shield. Emergency tactic augment your GCD heal to not project shield, but convert that shield into HP instead. Therefore, when there's need to meet HP check in mechanic, this is the skill to use because shield unfortunately does not count as HP. Expedient is your big button that provides 10% mitigation to nearby party members and also increase their movement speed, which allow this skill to be used in two ways, as a mitigation or a movement tool, or both if the fight demands it, like X1. Protection increase your target HP by 10% and restore that amount, but it also buff any incoming healing skill by 10%. I usually use this to buff my heal for pre-pull shield or to get fallen teammate up on their feet quickly. Resurrections, same like summoner version, this revive your teammate. And lastly, physics. This is your low MP single target healing spell if you're in a tight spot, but to be honest, I don't really use this skill. Let's look at the DPS skills next. Scholar DPS rotation is very simple like other healer as it involves only 2 to 3 main buttons. Broil 4, Other War 2, and Biolysis. Broil 4 is basically field GCD like Summoner Ruin 3, and Other War 2 is your AoE DPS GCD or essentially Summoner Tri Disaster, but it's an AoE around you so you need to get close to hit the mobs. Biolysis is your dot or damage over time skill. Try to keep this up on the enemy at all times since this will passively damage your enemy when it is applied on them. So, how would a bare bones Scholar rotation look like? For single target, Broil 4, apply Biolysis, spam Broil 4, and refresh Biolysis when it's about to expire. For more than 2 enemies, apply Biolysis and spam Other War 2 until everything stops moving. That should get you covered for the basic rotation, but there is a little bit more DPS skill that I need to mention. Ruin 2, this is your instant cast DPS GCD option when you need to move around, but it is a DPS loss though, so please keep that in mind. Next is Chain Stratagem. This is Scholar equivalent of Summoner Searing Light, but unlike Summoner, it increases everyone attack critical rate on the target by 10% rather than increase the damage of the party. So you need to have a target to use this, unlike Searing Light. Baneful Impaction is what Chain Stratagem will turn into after it is used, and yes, you guessed it. This is Scholar version of Searing Flash, but it's a dot instead. These are your 2 minutes button essentially. And lastly, Energy Drain. This will be a bit confusing to use since Energy Drain for Summoner is a single target Aetherflow stack generator, but you need to keep in mind while playing Scholar that Energy Drain for us is an OGCD DPS skill that uses Aetherflow stack instead. Now, we have come to the juicy part of Scholar Toolkit, which in my opinion is what makes Scholar so fun. There are 2 parts of Scholar specific job mechanic, the Faerie and Aetherflow. It is like Summoner Summons and Aetherflow Mechanic, but instead of damage, all of Scholar job mechanic is about healing, except Energy Drain of course. Now let's go over how these 2 gauge function. You get Aetherflow stack by using Aetherflow skill, and this can be used to cast these healing skill, or a DPS skill that is Energy Drain. And when you spend an Aetherflow stack, your Faerie gauge will increase by 10 each time. The Faerie gauge point then can be spent to use Aether Pack, but I'll explain that later. For now, just remember that use Aetherflow skill to get Aetherflow stack and spend Aetherflow stack to increase Faerie gauge. Now, let's go over the Faerie side first. Like Summoner, you need to have your Faerie summon at all time or else this side of mechanic will be locked to you. So remember to summon your Faerie every time even when you die, just like Kabunko. I'm sorry to say that we have the same issue as you guys. However, the reason why we need to have Faerie on field is not only because the skill that is locked behind them, but also because they will automatically heal the lowest HP teammate passively. It may look small at a glance, but trust me that in a long fight, you'll be surprised how much healing your Faerie take care for you in the background. Okay, moving on to the Faerie skill. Whispering Dawn is a healing over time skill. Think of this as a Phoenix regen on command. Fate Illumination do 2 things. Give 10% AoE mitigations and buff any GCD healing spell. Only GCD spell na, which means that this will only buff your Aetherflow or Consultations or other healer GCD like Sage Numa or White Mage Lilies. Fae Blessing is AoE heal around your Faerie, or in Summoner term, a Lux Solaris. Aether Pack will allow you to direct your Faerie heal to a specific target with this concentrated healing beam, but this skill uses Faerie gauge like I mentioned earlier. Summon Seraph. This is Scholar version of a big summon, but instead of big ass Elder Dragon, we have Giant Flying Blue Angel, which is our Faerie but on steroid. Because this skill will change the Faerie passive heal to have shield on top of it also. Moreover, another skill will be available to us while Seraph is on the field, and that is Consolation. Consolation is an AoE heal and shield to nearby party member around Seraph, and you have 2 charges of this skill. Okay, quick note though that all of these skills that I mentioned in this part are casted by your Faerie, and will have a slight delay when using the skill, therefore will be less smooth than what you accustomed to when playing Summoner, and you should press your skill a little bit in advance just to make sure that you get it out right on time. Seraphism is our level 100 skill, and it's transformed ourself, yes, ourself, into an angel for 20 seconds, and for that duration, we will regen nearby party members too. Furthermore, it will make your GCD heal to be stronger and become instant cast. Awesome, right? But there's more. It will also reset emergency tactic cooldowns and reduce it to 1 second for the whole duration you are in the Seraphism form. This skill is crazy good for like oh shit situations, but also multiple hit stack mechanic. Lastly, Dissipation. This work kinda like Aetherflow skill, which generate you 3 stack of Aetherflow, and it also buff your GCD heal by 20%. However, the catch is that your Faerie will be gone for 30 seconds, and every skill that I mentioned before this will be unusable. Yeah, that's why Scholar is well known for being janky, but you know, I love it because like, it's kinda like its charm at this point, you know. Moving on to the other side of the job mechanics, Aetherflow is another resource that Scholar can use to help with the healing and mitigations. To get Aetherflow stack, you must use Aetherflow skill or Dissipations, which will generate you 3 stack of Aetherflow, which can be used for these OGCD skill. The skill on this side is a lot more simpler, so I will go over it quickly. Lustrate is a simple single target heal, Sacred Soil is a 10% AoE mitigations and HP regeneration field. Indomitability is an AoE heal or Lux Solaris equivalent of this side of the mechanics. Excogitation is an applicable status effect that does not heal until the target health falls below 50% or when the excogitation status expires. Okay, now is the perfect time to explain the remaining part of the recitation skill. Not only does it allow you to cast a free auto crit at low or concitations, but that also applies to indomitabilities and excogitation too, which mean no Aetherflow stack needed and auto crit. This aspect of recitations can be very handy when things went south and you need to recover quick. And lastly, Energy Drain. This is your only Aetherflow stack spender that is DPS skill. Use this to burn remaining Aetherflow stack when Aetherflow is about to come off cooldowns or as a way to increase your overall DPS. Finally, for role actions, Repose. Izuna is used for cleansing any debuff that has this white line above like this. You will rarely see this, but please don't forget to use it when you encounter one. Lucid Dreaming, Swiftcast, Surecast. These has the same use case as Summoner, but you may need to be a bit more reserved on Swiftcast for Scholar since you're supposed to be the one who rescue your teammate first. Rescue is the ability that will pull your teammate to your location. It is a double-edged sword though, so use it responsibly. Okay, let's talk about healing in actual content. Now, before I say anything in this part, let me say first that I am no expert. I'm just a person who loves Scholar and play it a lot, and that allow me to learn a few things about it, and I hope to share my spin on how to approach content in this part. With that said, let's direct our attention to Trial and Raid healing. Across many Trial and Raid, there are 4 major types of mechanics that we have to heal as a healer. Raid Y. This is pretty much box standard opener of almost all of the bosses. Raid Y is simple to handle, you mitigate, then heal. The timing should be familiar to you since Scholar mitigations are basically Aero Pro Max. Tank Buster. It is a heavy hitting damage on tanks or the highest aggro players. You can help your tanks by using your shield or protections and maybe excogitation too for extra safety. Bleed, which is a mechanic that deals a chunk of damage over a good amount of times. Bleed mechanic can be approached in 2 ways. You can use regen skill like Whispering Dawn to fight with it if the bleed damage is not too high, or wait for the damage to hit a certain threshold, then burst heal to get everyone back up. Or both. Multi-hit. These are things like M3 Raid Ys, EX1 Fire Puddles, or EX2 Conga Line. For multi-hit as a Scholar, it is a bit tricky since we don't have one button solution like other healer does. What we can do though is of course, mitigate first, then weave our heal in between hits like Indomitabilities or Consolations. Or you can also Seraphism and spam Accession too. I do that in EX1 for the Fire Puddle. Alright, now we are moving on to the dungeon healing, or to be more precise, how to handle wall-to-wall pull. Wall-to-wall pull can be broken down into this diagram. Pre-pull, first round of mitigations, second round of mitigations, and sometime there will be a third round of mitigations, but that's kinda rare. For pre-pull, this is when your tank is running to pick mobs until reaching the wall. I recommend this combination of skill for pre-pull. When the tank stops, then we move on to the first round of mitigation. You will see here that there are slots for skills. Mitigation, plus regeneration, plus optional burst healing. This is the combination of skill that will allow you to handle wall-to-wall pull effectively. For mitigation, it is self-explanatory, these are your options. But I really suggest using Sacred Soil for the first round as it rotates the quickest. Then for regeneration, this is for your skill that heal teammate passively for long duration of time, such as these. And for optional burst healing slot, this is when your excog pop and your regen can't keep up with the incoming damage, so you might need to add this skill on top. When the first mitigation is about to fall off, we enter the second round and the same concept apply. That being said though, this diagram is not a set in stone kind of rule, as you need to look at how fast a mob die as well as how much damage the tank is receiving and adjust accordingly. This is meant to be more like a framework to get you started with handling wall-to-wall pull. And with that, I think that is it for this video. If you have any question about Scholar or if I missed anything at all, please let me know in the comment section below. I'll see you all later. Bye. And thank you Kuching 911, Larry Smith, Rin Ishikawa, Itzinos, Yuri Ayubina, and Hana515 for supporting the channel.